So you made a Camaro engine throw up.
Yes.
Right there on the floor.
Yes.
Such a nice mess. At least there's, well, I've been thinking that what we should actually do is just take and put a bunch of motor oil all over the floor in here.
Yeah,
and
it's
done
like
with it.
camouflage.
Yeah, you just splotch it around in here, like get a mop, an
Yeah.
old mop, and just plop, plop, plop. Let it dry up. It'll stop stinking after what, week, 2 weeks probably.
It'll be a modern art masterpiece.
But then we wouldn't have to worry if we spill, because every time we spill in here, a little piece of me dies. Because I can remember how this floor looked when we first got here. We got spills everywhere.
Yeah, it's a shop floor.
It's a shop floor. Well, actually, it's a studio floor that's a shop floor as well. So, but we're gonna stop on the Camaro where we're at, because we do have to start doing other things and gathering parts and all. Since now we know where we are, we have to get things in. We've already got the Summit Racing crate engine that we got from them. We've assembled that, and we're going to try to put together a video. We put that thing together a long time ago, and it's an embarrassingly long time ago. So we're going to try to put together a little video that is a sidebar episode we're going to do on that engine, putting it together. So that's not going to be a thing on here. It'll be a sidebar episode down the road. But we've got to get parts for the 4-speed to get that Muncie built. I've never built a Muncie, so I've got to go out and do some research on that. But the Camaro is going to be popping out of here again. For just a little while. I want to do a real quickie on the F100. It's running okay again. I tried to fix the manifolds, and I think what I want to do next is do a video on if what we did doesn't work on your vehicle, things that you can do to get around it, and rather than having to buy a new set of manifolds. They are available for the F100s, but they're like $400 for the set.
They're pricey.
You get right on the ragged edge of just saying, well, why don't I just put headers on it?
That's what I was about to say.
But what I wanted to talk about today is I was out on Facebook the other day, and I keep seeing things that make me think of the subject matter I want to talk about today, which is driving a classic car, and things that are, in my opinion, pretty darn important when you're going to be going out and doing that. One of them was a guy's child was wanting to drive his car. That's a classic car that's been idle for a little while. So it put me in mind of some safety things, and a couple of guys. I have a guy I follow on Instagram who was on Power Tour, and his car broke on Power Tour. And on Power Tour, he's sitting in the car talking about cars overheating, all those kind of little things. And it got me in mind of like 5 or 6 things that you should do for your car and to be able to go on any kind of short road trip or long road trip. So one of the first things I wanted to mention, and we have 5 of these, but this is outside of that, is when you finish the car and you think you're done with it, because you're never done with it.
Doesn't work that way.
It never works that way. Because we had that happen on Power Tour for us. We had a suspension problem happen.
The axle came loose.
The axle came loose. And we had to limp home.
All of a sudden started going that way down the road.
Anyway, so what my point on that is do due diligence. We were like up against the wall trying to get the car done, and we didn't do what I normally do, which is I'll start with a small circle of a 5-minute drive, a 10-minute drive, a 15-minute drive, and then a 30-minute drive and an hour drive away from your house. So in other words, you're an hour away from your house, you're 10 minutes away from your house on a return trip. And what you can do with that is you can suss out how good the car is doing. In a 5-minute drive, you're going to know pretty darn quick what you've got going right and what you've got going wrong. So that is the very first thing I would have you look at, is doing a 5-minute drive on completion. Other things, though, if you have a car that is not necessarily a car that you're rebuilding, but you're just kind of using and driving around, is dealing with things like your suspension. And I'm going to kind of glom all this together, but suspension, steering, and driveline. Yeah. Make sure all that's in good nick. Yeah. For one of the biggest things we see is what? Cooling.
Yeah, cooling on classic cars is the major problem. But also your brakes, suspension bushings, all that, ball joints.
And some of it's not even safety problems. Some of the things that can really get to you is like if you're driving a classic car, early Fords are particularly bad about this, is squeaking suspension parts. Yep. It's not necessarily meaning the car's going to fall apart on you, but it's just annoying.
Yep. And
when you're driving a car and little annoying noises get on your nerves. My wagon has a problem with the mechanics well or seat area in the very back rattling.
Yep.
It makes a lot of noise, and it's really freaking annoying. The back seat on those cars, if you don't have the bushings in there and the bumpers in there, those back seats will rattle because they're fold forward back
Just
seats.
sit there and vibrate.
Gets
Especially with the exhaust that's on that thing, or the lack of exhaust that's on this.
No tailpipes on that
Yeah.
car. So those things are really things to look at. But make sure that your steering's in good condition, because if you're doing this with your steering wheel when you're going down the road, like Jackson's 66 Falcon, if you're doing this when you're driving the car, you have a problem that needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
It's not just a little problem. That is a major problem, because in an instance where you're having to get out of somewhere in a hurry, you're not going to be able to just swing out of the way. So steering and suspension are primary in my book. I don't mind if it's using a little oil. I don't mind if I get a little smoke out of it. I don't care if it's leaking.
Yeah.
I know the ecologists out there and people who are like, all over Mother Nature, blah, blah, blah. I understand how you feel, but a little bit of oil leak doesn't bother me.
If there's oil underneath of it, that means there's oil in it.
Well, there was.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what the asphalt on the road's for, right?
Yeah,
Because you can have
You're
a
just
place to put.
redoing the blacktop for them.
You're helping them out with the blacktop. But the engine stuff doesn't bother me so much, other than cooling, because I think you're right. Cooling is a major issue. And also carburetor issues. All those kind of things should be worked out.
And cooling issues is big because back when these cars were designed, the speed limit was lower. They weren't really meant to be sustained 70 miles an hour.
Oh, I disagree. I think they were running 70 miles an hour, but they weren't lasting as long. I mean, an engine back in the day would run, because I'm old enough
From that era.
I remember.
From the 1900s.
I can look back into my mind and see 70-mile-an-hour speed limit signs on or Interstate 20 when it was new. So, I mean, I can remember that kind of thing. People used to go a lot. They would go just as fast, but the cars would wear out quicker. The bigger problem I see in it from an overheating, two things for overheating standpoint is, one of them is gasolines that we run now. I probably would run premium in anything.
Yeah. If it's got a carburetor, it should probably get premium.
Get premium because it's got a higher boiling point. It doesn't flash as bad as the 87.
The additive package is just way better.
Yeah, it is a lot better additive package. I would do that. But I mean, again, all these things can be broken down into each individual one, an episode in and of itself. The cooling one, I think Cam and I will be in the next couple of weeks on the F100, even though I don't have a cooling problem with that truck, showing you guys exactly how to diagnose a cooling issue in your classic car. So that is coming down the road. Next up, we're going to talk about safety, because I know that people have the little stickers in their windows that says, we don't have seat belts, we die like real men. But my point on that is this. It would be better if it said, no seat belts, we get crippled like real men.
Yeah.
Because you may not die. I find that kind of funny. I went on a canoeing trip a long time ago, and the canoeing guide said, okay, I'm not going to tell you you're going to die, because people don't mind dying. They do mind being maimed. He says, so I'm going to say that if you don't follow my directions, you will be maimed. Seat belts are not a bad thing. They're a really good thing. Shoulder belts, particularly in some of the early cars that have solid steering shafts that go all the way down to the steering box. A shoulder belt, you may pop a collarbone, but you're not going to get impaled on a spear inside your car. Always look to putting seat belts in a classic car, and particularly a shoulder belt. I will say this, when you're putting shoulder belts in those cars, make sure you understand where the belt needs to go. There is information out there on the internet on positioning for belts and where they should go, because you were talking about this with a 4-point harness.
Yeah, putting harnesses and any belts, they need to be the shoulder, it needs to be above your shoulder line or level with your shoulder. Because if it's beneath your shoulder, what happens is it curls your back. You basically become a U.
In the wrong direction.
Yes. Yeah.
It's not like bending over to pick up a pencil. It's going the other way.
Yeah, it's looking at the floor behind you for the rest of your life.
As short as that might be.
Yeah, it's not good.
It's not good. Another thing that's really important, kind of talking about safety, is braking. If you have a pre-1967 car, when the federal government mandated a dual bowl master cylinder, a dual reservoir master cylinder, a backup brake system, always convert to that. We're going to be doing it on Jackson's car on his 66 Falcon because the Falcon has a single bowl reservoir on it.
It's not a hard job.
It's not a hard job. I would also recommend now, as combination valves have gotten more readily available, putting a combination valve rather than the screw type restrictor on the car, because the combination valve will even out the braking system better and make it operate better. So brakes, very important. If you're going to be doing a lot of driving with your car, I recommend putting disc brakes on it. Is it going to stop you better? Yes. Is it going to stop you along with everything else around here? No. Modern cars with ABS systems, they're going to ace you every time. They're going to be able to outstop you. But with the disc brakes, it gives you just that little bit more of an edge to be able to get stopped quicker in case of an accident. So brakes, belts, what else for safety?
Fire extinguisher.
Fire extinguisher. How long?
Yep. If possible, always get a how long.
Now I know people are going to say it's really expensive.
Yes.
But it's a little bit of story time right now. Maybe we can put a cool graphic around me for story time every time I do this. I was helping a friend of mine in Texas, Tommy McCurdy, you know who I'm talking about. I was helping a friend of mine in Texas with his light restoration on a 68 GT500 KR convertible, which Tommy still owns. And we had gone in and painted the engine. We had done the shock towers. We had done a great job detailing this thing out for a local car show. Tommy brings it to the show. The carburetor pukes, somehow erupts in fire, and every stinking bit of detail work we did in that engine bay was ruined by the smart thinking and quick acting sales guy at the Ford dealership the day that happened. Because he went and used an ABC style fire extinguisher, a dry fire extinguisher. It got everywhere in that engine bay. And it's even worse inside the inside of a car. You were saying that
if you spray it inside of a car, that'll get into every single crevice. And it'll practically start snowing when you hit bumps and drive, and it just never ends.
How do you know that?
Trucks. And it eats wiring harnesses like nothing. I don't know what it is, but the powder is either very basic or acidic. I can't remember.
I think it's an acidic compound.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the big problem is the wiring harness gets eaten up and everything else. The Halon fire extinguisher, Halon, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm sure someone will tell me how to pronounce that in the comments below. Please, by all means, tell me that my pronunciation is either incorrect or correct. I call it a Halon fire extinguisher. You can call it a Halon fire extinguisher. You can call it a Hail Mary fire extinguisher. I don't care. You should have one in your car. I don't care. Even if you can't afford that, at least have an ABC style fire extinguisher in there for putting out any kind of fires you may encounter.
Gallon of water, something.
Plan. Oil fire with a gallon of water is a good idea. But
and when you're overheating, it works for that too.
So you realer. Anyway, so the Halon fire extinguisher is expensive, but I think it's a really good idea for automotive applications. That's what they'll use, and a lot of times in computer stuff. They'll have those kind of fire extinguishers to put out fires.
Because it just starves the fire for oxygen and it dies.
Yes. All right, so the next thing I wanted to talk about is tools. I go back and forth on this. If I'm within 5 minutes of the house, I'll go back to my house to get tools. 15 minutes, I'll go back to get tools. 30 minutes, I'll go back to get tools if I need them somehow. I'll get a friend to come out and pick me up and we'll go get the tools, or I'll have him bring them to me. I don't know that tools, everybody does it. I even do it. My dad used to do it. We'd always carry a toolbox in the truck, and I can remember 2 or 3 times that it came in handy. We had to rebuild.
It's not always, but when you need it, it's helpful.
When you need it, it's good. And so, I mean, I would recommend having a set of SAEs and metrics in the car in case you stop to help somebody else. But the problem is how big a toolbox do you want to have? I mean, we had a big, heavy Grace toolbox. So I'm going to show you an image of that toolbox right here. This is actually the one that Dad and I used for years when we would travel going around the United States in our van. That sounds like a bunch of hippies, I know, but it really wasn't like that. Even though he had a toilet, never mind, I'm not going to go into all that. He had a toilet in the back, and anyway, some very scarring memories.
As long as there wasn't a hole in the floor and that was the toilet.
Releasing chaff. Once again, being derailed. I derailed myself and you helped. The one time I do remember is Dad and I and Mom were on a trip coming to South Carolina, and we had a carburetor problem with the Holly. It got trash in the bowl from the fuel system somehow. And we had to pop the Holly off and rebuild the Holly on the side of I-20.
Yep.
That was very exciting. But we had the tools and we could do it, and we got back on the road and everything was fine. And I have heard of a lot of guys who will say, well, I put a spare distributor and a spare starter and a spare starter solenoid in my car. I have honestly, in my life, never had the right part.
Yeah.
Except for that one time, and it was just because we had the right tools in the truck, and it wasn't needing a new gasket on the bowl or any of that kind of stuff. It was just cleaning the carburetor bowl out.
Yep.
I've never...
If you're carrying hard parts like starters, actual components, it's never going to be that. It will.
No.
Yeah.
And if you're doing that, what is your trust level in your
Yeah.
automobile?
Yeah.
I mean, I see guys talking about doing that, and to me, it's like, carry the tools, get the car carried to somewhere you can work on it, and then buy the parts and put them on the car.
Yeah.
At this stage in the game, though, can you even get the parts without having to get a hotel room and stay in 3 or 4 days to wait on the parts to show up from wherever you need to get them? You've got guys like National Parts Depot who carry the stuff, but if you're 3 days away from them, you have to call them, order the parts, and then the parts show up. Things like starters and sometimes even distributors can be possibly hard to get from local parts stores, just depending on what they have. A lot of times they may have to order it from out of town because distributors are becoming almost a thing of the past.
Go to a chain store and try and get a carburetor rebuild kit.
Yeah, carburetor rebuild, because they have to order them in. They don't have them at the stores. They get them from the warehouse. They come in from the warehouse. I had to order for the truck when I was doing the rebuild on the exhaust system. I had to order exhaust manifold gaskets because they were just worn out, and they had to order them from the main warehouse in Columbia. They didn't have them locally.
Yep.
So I mean. And this is a 72 F100. It's on something that was viable as an engine all the way up through the late 70s.
Yeah. Nah, nobody stocks anything anymore in chain stores.
Not a lot. I mean, and they got one of them. If you need two, they only have
Yep.
one, and you have to go to the other store somewhere in town to get the other one. So anyway, I think tools are a good idea, just simply from a safety blanket.
Yeah.
You
You should be able to change your tire and do basic repairs with your toolkit.
Yeah, I mean, otherwise it's not really.
You shouldn't be doing it on the side of the road.
No, I mean, that it does happen, and I'm like, honestly, I like the idea of a little bit of baling wire or safety wire,
Yeah, mechanics wire.
a little bit of mechanics wire in the car, a little spool of it, zip ties, and duct tape. Possibly those three things are more valuable than the rest of it, because most everything can be fixed,
Cobbled.
fabricable, back into condition with those things. But I mean, on the whole, I don't think tools, I don't know, because that leads me to the next thing. And the next thing is towing.
Yes.
Because if you're going to have an old car and you're going to be going on longer trips with it, maybe not necessarily locally. If you're doing it locally, make friends with a guy like our friend Pat. Pat Lee has a nice trailer, and he's a nice man, so at 11 o'clock at night, I can call Pat up, and I can say, hey, I'm stuck on the side of the road after going to a cruising in Columbia. Can you come get me? Pat will hook up the trailer and come get me, maybe once or twice.
Yeah.
So you should probably make 2 or 3 friends that have
You got to start bribing them afterwards.
You have to start paying for it. But a tow service does the same thing. As long as you can get a guy with a flatbed and he's not a moron, putting it on the flatbed, you should be good to go.
Yeah.
And so a towing service, when you call them up and you get to wait the 3.5 to 4 hours for the guy to show up, it's the price you pay, but then you can take it all the way to the house within, I think most of them are within 100 miles of wherever you live. So
it's the best way to enjoy your classic car is in the rearview mirror while it's on the trailer behind you.
look at that grill.
Yeah.
I paid a lot of money for that grill.
The polish looks good.
It's great.
Yep.
All right, so guys, if you have any ideas you want to part onto us and let us know about, put them in the comments below. We like to read them and hear them from you guys, because sometimes we get some cool ideas from there I'm always gleaning stuff off of there that I can pass on to other people, because I do get a lot of calls and emails from folks saying, hey, I got a problem with this. So if you guys help me out by putting stuff in the comments below, it makes it a lot nicer for me to be able to pass that information on to other folks that may need it. So I guess that's really it for this week. Next week, I'm going to probably be coming back with the exhaust problem we have on the F100. I tried putting manifold gaskets on it, and the manifolds are so worn that they won't seal up. So Cam and I are going to show a fabricable
Little bit of goop.
gabagoo.
The gabagoo.
Gotta put the gabagoo on it. So we're going to show you how to take them off and put the gabagoo
It's Italian.
to make them seal. People are so bad. Be sure to be kind to each other, love on each other, treat each other nice. You guys have a great week. We'll see you next time on Autorestomod. The gabagoo.
Yeah, it's no longer going to be a Ford. It's going to be a Fiat. You know what Fiat
A
stands?
Fordot.
No, you know what Fiat stands for?
Fix it again, Tony.